This is our first time. You guys are kind of our guinea pigs because we've participated in lots of webinars, but the center itself, this is the first time that we have actually been in charge of running the webinar on our own. So I'm Elizabeth Osborne. I'm the Director of Education at the IU Center on Representative Government. And in this capacity, the center has been one of the founding members of the Teaching with Primary Sources Consortium at the Library of Congress. And we've been involved, so I guess maybe about 15 years, but about 5 years ago, the Library of Congress decided to venture into new fields, into the digital world, which at the time was very cutting edge for them. And they put out a request for proposals to create some digital and civics interactives that involved analyzing primary sources online. So using Library of Congress resources and following the inquiry cycle and doing that through an online civics interactive. So that is how the center came about and developed Engaging Congress along with 2 other partners who were selected in that initial round. And we had 3 years to develop our project, and then it launched 2 years ago at NCSS. So we're about 2.5 years in, and the biggest part of our project right now is creating geographic expansion of the project and just making teachers aware that this free application is out there for them to use and to give them ideas about how to use it in their classroom. The really funny thing is when I do all my face-to-face PD, I'm always emphasizing to people how the ways that they can use this in person in their classroom, that digital interactives aren't just to use for homework or to fill time when a sub is there. And now I've, switched 100%, and now I'm doing webinars showing people how they should integrate it into their distance learning. So really, we developed this as a tool that we think you can use in your classroom and you can use for distance learning. I have a background as both a high school social studies teacher and as a professor at the university level. And then I've worked for about 18 years developing teacher curriculum and doing teacher training, both for the Indiana Supreme Court and the last 5 years for this center. We're going to be joined today by 2 middle school teachers, Larry Dorenkamp and Joe Welch, who teach at a school out in suburban Pittsburgh. And I met them at one of my last face-to-face PD before the COVID, sent us all home for the semester. And one of them is they are going to show classroom applications that also can be translated into digital. So I think everybody's voted. It's nice to know we got a lot of people who teach other than American history, civics, or government. So I'd love for you guys in the chat box, if you teach something else, just to type in what else you teach. Just so, because I find it interesting. My daughter and I both say that we're data collectors, that we love to have as much data as we can. We just like to know about people and things. So I'm going to start with our first slide here, theoretically. Let's see if we can get the PowerPoint to advance. There we go. So Engaging Congress is essentially a free fun civics game that uses primary sources to explore how government works. But one of the things that I always want to emphasize to people is it's not just for social studies, that any social studies class can use it, but also you can use it for any kind of class, because at the heart of Engaging Congress is building your students' inquiry skills, your students' ability to analyze primary sources. So all of the primary sources that we've used, every component of the game can be used by itself. So there are 30 primary sources in the game. I'm going to call it a game. We go back and forth between app, interactive, game. So I'm just using them all interchangeably. And I know the real tech people say, oh, there's slight differences, but I'm a 19th century historian. I'm a very low tech person. I did my dissertation actually pulling the books out of the library, which kills me that now you can just, pull them up on the internet and search for keywords and not have to read every line like I did. So I'm using them interchangeably. So we have 30 primary sources. And so you could use them as a weekly skill builder. Somebody in science or an ELA could just pull them out and just use them as an analysis building skill, because all of the information, as you're going to see here in a minute, for the initial analysis can be used that way. They're also arranged thematically. So we have within each of the 5 themes, primary sources ranging from photographs to political cartoons to text to charts to maps. So you have a whole variety of different types of skills, and they range from the founding era to the present, because one of our key mantras is all of these themes of representative government are still under debate. They're still in action. Your students shouldn't think that, oh, the founding fathers settled this issue or the Civil War settled this issue, so we're done now. We want them to show that these issues are still current and applicable to their lives. And the COVID situation, if nothing else, is a lesson in federalism and states' rights. And, you know, can the president or tell the governors they can't open their states? Right there is that whole question. So that's one of our things. So that's why, and also each of the units has a short 1.5 minute video that introduces the theme. And I think these are very useful for maybe the science teacher when election day is coming up and the kids are like, oh, why should we vote? Why is it so important? They could just show the 1.5 minute video in their class. If you're teaching comparative government, I find that these are a really helpful way in comparative government and world history classes to remind your students the stuff that you know they should know because they were taught in 5th grade and in 8th grade and in 9th grade and in 10th grade. But when you ask them the 3 branches of government, they're still a little bit befuddled. So just show them the little 1.5 minute video to review the information before you start talking about, you know, what a parliamentary government is or what a dictatorship is. So there's lots of different ways to use this, and it's formatted for all different types of devices. So you can lead a classroom session through Zoom or in your classroom using, you know, a single teacher unit projecting on your smartboard. Your students can play through Chromebooks or laptops. They can play on phones or iPads. So they can use it, play with it on just about any sort of device they want. So I am gonna jump out here for a minute, because what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna show you the how-to video. It's about a 2-minute video that explains different parts of the game and kind of shows you the game in action. And I'm gonna pause it in places and kind of add some of my own commentary. And then after I'm done with that, one of the teachers is gonna jump in and give you a demonstration or talk about how he's planning on using it in his classroom. So this is the part where you have to excuse me for not being super great at this. Hey, I stopped sharing. I can see all of you now. But now I'm gonna share again and go to the Engaging Congress website. Theoretically, I pulled it up before we started. Let's see here. But it looks like I lost it, so I'm going to type it in again, but my computer knows where it is. So here is the Engaging Congress website. You can see across the top, you can, like, events like this webinar and future ones are going to be there, tools for teacher, the primary source documents. One of the things that's really nice about this is all of the primary sources from the Library of Congress that are used in the application. You can come to the website and click on the links that will take you directly back to the Library of Congress. And that's how, when I'm doing in-class activities like sort-its or gallery walks, or if I want to divide them into groups and each of them have one of the primary sources, I just print them right off from the Library of Congress, because you can click on the links. And you can also have the students explore other items like this. So for example, you really like the Death at the Polls kind of magazine cover, you can scroll to the bottom and it'll show you other items like that, so you can have some more. Here on the website is where your students, if you're going to, you or your students are going to play on the web, you just click on this button and it takes you to the Simmer site. We are working on, and we were hoping to have it ready for today, that across the top there's going to be a button that'll call play, and you can just click on that and it'll take you. And this also just reminds you to download at the stores. So you can see we have some national standards linked across here for U.S. history, government, ELA. We have the 5-unit videos. You can play them on YouTube or you can play them through here. The teacher toolbox, and then here where the primary sources. Then I was mentioning, Jen was showing the little votes for women squeeze head, but during the regular time when you're in your classroom with your students, we have classroom giveaways like stickers and little squeeze heads that are just free. And you can just fill out the form that's on here and we'll send them to you so your kids can have swag. So I just wanted to point that out for you before I played the how-to video. Okay, so I'm gonna play this video and then I'm gonna stop it and explaining. Okay.
Hey Liz, we're having trouble with the audio on the video.
Okay, I just
I don't
turned
think
on the
anybody
closed
can hear it. Okay.
I'm gonna go back here.
And maybe check and see if you can turn the volume up on your YouTube.
Still not hearing it. It's no sound, but it's subtitles now. I can read it. Jennifer still not having no sound.
Okay, I know you guys are having trouble with the audio, and so hopefully you're reading the subtitles as
Mm-hmm.
it's going across. But I wanted to stop here. One of the reasons I wanted to stop here is because in this primary source analysis, I find it very strange. I've got all you guys on there, so it's hard for me to see. But you can see on the primary source analysis, these first 3 questions, students can do with no prior content knowledge. So the answers to all 3 of these first questions where they do the drag and the drop are, they can see the answers in front of them. So all they need to be able to do is to look at and build their skills. All the
Thank you, Casey.
information is contained in either the map or the chart or the text that they're looking at. So it doesn't require any prior content knowledge. Now I'm going to start it again a little bit here. And I'm going to show you there. You should to see. I'm having trouble with the pause. So whenever they answer the question right or wrong, I hope you saw up there in the corner it said correct. And when it gave the correct, it also then filled in some more background knowledge. And if they got the question wrong, it tried to anticipate why they picked that incorrect answer and give them some guides. It's like, you know, these people don't look like they're at a party because they're all in dark suits and look very sad and serious. So it tries to look at the contextual clues that they might have misinterpreted and help them out. And then here at the end, we give them these, the dig deeper, which fills in more background content. So that if this is your subject area and you're trying to build content knowledge, you can build your content knowledge as well. I'm gonna escape out and see if I can turn up the volume and then come back to 1:08 here. I don't know if this will help any, but let's go back into the, play it again, restart it and see if that helps any. So that's one of the ways that you can, in a Zoom classroom meeting or in your own classroom setting, you can go to the primary source gallery and see all of the primary sources and pick the one that So each of the 5 thematic units has a different mini game that emphasizes a different skill. So for example, the one that's on voting rights, the mini game is a sequencing game where the students don't have to know the dates of when something happened, but after studying the 6 primary sources, they should at least be able to know that things relating to civil rights earlier than women's suffrage, which happened earlier than the Civil Rights Act. So it's a sequencing game. And here, the knowledge check questions are another place if you need to do assessment of each of the primary sources has 3 assessment questions, which are now asking if your students read and paid attention to the content as they went through the game, as opposed to just click, 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 and trying to get through. Okay, again, I apologize for some of the sound issues there. I'm going to read through the chat, whereas at this point, I am going to turn it over to Larry, who is correct. So Larry, you're going to go first, and I'm going to share my screen here, and I have a couple of slides for Larry's presentation. Let's see. There you go.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Larry Dornkamp. I teach at North Hills Middle School in Pittsburgh, PA. Nice to see some of you here today. Some of you hiding behind your names, much like my students do on these Zoom sessions, but that's okay. As Professor Osborne was saying, we had met in February at her last presentation, and Joe and I were kind of taken in by this app and had just started spitballing some uses that we could see back in February for use of this app. For me personally, getting ready to start the Civil War. And when we get to the end of the war and talk about the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, I could see some application here, specifically with the vote early, vote often game that is involved with the Engaging Congress app. I'm a big visual learner for my students. Pictures worth 1,000 words is one of my mantras. So I might start off by having them, after we kind of talk about what the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment is, I might just have them take in that Harper's Weekly drawing and talk about, what do they see here, what's happening, anything that they notice first, who they think this audience might be for, who the author might have been, what is his viewpoint on the freedmen now voting. So maybe get a little background and get a little conversation going with that. And then they could use the matching of these thumbnails to maybe explore this drawing a little bit further. So that's how I could see using the app, and specifically this image that you see on the screen. So if we could jump to the next one.
Sorry, yep, I'm
No,
here.
you're good. That's okay. Multitasking, always a good thing. So once we get through the 15th Amendment and their right to vote, we might talk about, the Southern viewpoint of the freedmen voting. So I might again ask them, okay, what do they see here? What's happening? What do you see? What do you notice first? What about the person that drew this? Are they pro-voting or are they against the voting of the freedmen? And the students then could match the boxes with the colors on the screen there and answer the questions that would go with it. So that's how I could see that. And then maybe have an activity after that of trying to limit people's rights to vote within the class in a certain way. Might get creative just to try to hit on different types of learning, whether it be visual or hands-on or getting up out of their seats, and some sort of activity to go with this. So that's how I could see using this app in my classroom, in a traditional classroom. I'm not sure yet how that's going to happen now in the virtual world, but I got a couple more weeks to finish working through that. So, Professor Osborne, I hope that's helpful and what you were looking for.
Right, one of the things I want to bounce off of Larry's ideas is I want to show you here on where they dragged in. You can see that we have the glossary hyperlinked there. So we have the word poll tax. This is a slide for him, so I can't click on the poll tax since it's a PowerPoint slide that doesn't want to move to its correct spot. But you can see that we've got that there, and the three choices. This is where we were talking about how they drag and drop, which is what that sequence was. So this particular one,
Teach them
so I can hear
what
somebody there.
Virginia right now.
So one of the things that is a great feature when you have this on your mobile app is that you
Thank you. Good to be
can
here.
use, like I'm kind of pinching and pulling on my screen, which isn't exactly accurate, but when they're on their phones or their mobile devices and they click on the primary source, they are able to zoom all the way in. So to read the small print here, they can read what he's standing on underneath here, because we know on the screen that you're seeing it right now, it's kind of hard for you to read much other than the title. But whenever the students will zoom in, and then the part that they are going to actually closely analyze, it zooms in on them for as well. So one of what I think is the neatest features is this ability that the students are able to maneuver their way around each primary sources and zoom in and out on the topic that they're most interested in. So that was great, Larry. Thanks a lot. I'm going to go back up here to a
You're
slide
welcome.
prepared that we didn't talk about. And here is just a screen that shows some of the activities from the different units. So for example, the game in the bottom right-hand corner is from the federal budget game. So it has a game that has them use a pie chart, and here they have to assign to the federal budget a percentage. And as they click on each of the parts of the federal budget underneath here, it explains that particular department. And once they complete their budget, they submit it and it compares it to the most current budget. So that's a different one. And here, for example, we're talking about photographs of different skill level. Here is kind of one of the easier analysis items. And again, these are suffragettes voting. So all the premise is to use that inquiry base that your students have, the see, think, wonder, observe, reflect, question, whatever is the particular words that you use, whether you use prompts. And each of the primary sources, when you choose your story and then choose your primary source, it's going to give them a prompt question. So they're going to kind of have a writing prompt. And so those writing prompts are something that you could pull right out and use on a quiz or a test. So there is no teacher sign-in. There is no classroom management system. So your kids don't have to log in. And one of the biggest reasons for that were concerns with privacy issues. So our teacher advisory panel, when we were developing this, that was one of the things that they were really talking about, was schools having concerns with student privacy. So we decided that you would just assess in other ways. And one of the biggest ways that I emphasize doing assessment is making sure you integrate the content into your assessment. So if you have them watch the video as one of their, I don't know if any of you guys are using, I've heard them called choice boards or bingo boards, where you have, maybe 10 or 15 activities on a board and they have to choose and do, like 3 a day or complete a line. And, you could put the watching the content video in there for one day. You could have them do one of the analysis items on another day. They could play the game another day. And one of the things they can do is they can send you screenshots of their stars showing that they've completed a unit. And it lets you replay until you get all your stars or all your checks on the games. They can't guess. Whenever they're doing the analysis that, I'm going to go back to Joe's slide here, when they're doing their analysis, you can see the stars down here. And if they don't get it after the second try, if they get it on the second try, they'll get 1.5 stars. But it doesn't let them guess. So you can't get 2 stars. You either get 1 star, 1.5, or 3 stars. So that's another way. And again, I like to do a short quiz or do a minute writing. You watch the content video, do a minute writing, and tell me what you learned. So those were, and on the website, we have those connections to the Library of Congress items and the Library of Congress analysis sheets. So on that note, I am going to stop sharing and we're going to turn it over to Joe Welch to share some of his ideas for using it in the classroom.
Thank you very much, Professor Osborne. Just like Larry Dornkamp, I teach outside of Pittsburgh, actually at the room right next to Larry, ironically. So we spend quite a little bit of time together. And I'm looking forward to sharing how I integrate one of the applications really within the game and take it into my classroom, into a physical setting. But I did see a question in the chat there from Lauren about the different levels of rigor. And just a quick piece of feedback on that. What's really nice about having that primary source library or built into into the game or to the app, what makes that nice is that that opens up so much in terms of looking beyond what's on the surface there. If I'm going through the stories here, and I'm going to share my screen, and if you bear with me. And there we go. So this is the actual view here. I'm on my iPad right now. And what's nice, I'm going to go into a concept that I teach 8th graders, a concept that they really struggle with, even though we live in Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania was one of the most gerrymandered state up until about a year and a half ago. It's a concept that's foreign to them, 13 and 14-year-olds. And opening up that conversation of, they're very interested in how can I make a difference? And when I pose this question to my students, they'll come up with all kinds of great ideas of things that they're interested in. And they say, well, I'll write to my local politician, I'll start a blog, I'll start this, I'll write letters. And then we get to this issue of representation and how does it actually work? And what's really surprising is that when we get to this topic of gerrymandering, I get a lot of blank looks. And that's no fault of their own. It's what this app will though enable, or this game enables, is this really seamless introduction to this complex concept. So here I am right now in the gerrymander section of the game. And this was shown a little bit in the video that Professor Osborne showed, and you can see it was alluded to, there's a glossary built right into here. So even this idea, gerrymander, to manipulate electoral boundaries to the advantage of one party, still may need a little bit more of an explanation depending on the level of your students that you're using this on. But what I love about this is it really makes students piece by piece look at what is the document actually saying. So here we have a primary source here about gerrymandering. Oh, okay, it's depicted as a monster. And I can now break that apart and say, well, why is it monster? It has a negative connotation. So obviously something must be bad with this idea of gerrymandering. And so this really breaks it down, as I said, step by step for a student. And I could continue on with this. But after I go through this, this process, what lends itself now is to some in-class activities. And I believe that a video is going to be shown of how you can use this within the app. But I like to use this strategy that's on my screen. Now, Pennsylvania has a nonpartisan group called Draw the Lines PA that we utilize this with. And it's this idea, not Republican, not Democrat, but just the blue dot, or the green dots and the yellow dots. Sorry, I'm colorblind there, so I slipped for a second. And this idea, just breaking it down to the very basic level of, imagine you're a political operative, and I want you to create 3 districts with, and as you can see here from number 1, they look very, very even, but is there a way that you can unfairly draw these districts so that the yellow win 2 of the 3 districts? And that's all fine and good if this is on paper. I think it's a great introduction. But the power of this is where you can now allow students to move around the room. And I get my painter's tape out, and I'll have students wear different wristbands, whether a yellow wristband or a green wristband or whatever it may be. And what that serves is this idea that, getting back to the game here, that gerrymandered districts are a man-made obstacle to democracy. Or to voters' voice, and that they can be changed. And just by moving painter's tape around the room and how we're laying out districts, it's really simple for students to now visualize this, that, okay, yes, everybody's districts are, perhaps they look different, but there is a solution to not fall victim to the gerrymander. I'm going to go with one more item here, and even if you're not in Pennsylvania, this is a resource that is outstanding to take that game a step further. As I mentioned, it's called Draw the Lines PA, and this is it's a map that allows you to, it has population data that's updated, I believe, monthly, and it really challenges students to how can you fairly create representative districts. So it's a great extension off of that gerrymander game. Now, again, going back to those ideas of rigor, I'm going to hop right back into the app, and I know I'm going a little bit over my time here. This is also built in, and I believe I'm going to hand it back because this redistricting game is built right into the application. So as far as leveling this, if you have seniors or high school students looking at actual data, might be the way you want to go, or breaking that data down in a math room, classroom, or whatever your environment is. I think there's an application to make this worthwhile for you and your students.
So I am going to jump back in and say thanks, Joe. I think that's a fantastic activity because I love any activity that physically moves my kids around the classroom. I like to do things like that. So one of the things, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen here, and I'm going to show you that, not chat, sorry, I want share screen. I'm going to go into our PowerPoint slideshow, share screen. And I'm going to just play this short little video here that our developers put together that kind of shows, there is no volume, so I can talk over it, shows the gerrymandering game in action here. It's demonstrating to you here levels 2 of 6, and there are actually 6 levels, so the kids have to work through. In our case, we have the Y's and the Z's instead of the yellows and the greens, but they have to play through, and by the time they've gotten to level 6, they are making the craziest looking districts, and they're like, this is ridiculous, and you're like, yes, that's exactly what gerrymandering is. It's like creating districts out of craziness. I just have 2 slides, so I'm going to beg your indulgence to do these really quickly. Thanks to all of you that have to go, but again, I just want to emphasize that this is accessible on multiple platforms. Here is a picture from an in-class visit that we did where the kids had a homework the night before, and if they completed the homework, then they could use the choice of using the classroom laptops or their phones, and lots of them like to use their phones because they thought that was a treat. And again, that we started it off by showing the video to the whole class. We did, I think, fair is not always equal, and showed the whole video, the video as a group to the class. We went through and analyzed one of the primary sources together, and then we turned them loose to do the other ones on their own. And here is a question that a couple people asked about the rigor for different levels of learners. And one of the things we've really tried to do, and I will say that this is a picture from Larry and Joe, this isn't your group, but this was at your workshop of teachers doing a sorted activity with the all of the primary sources printed out, and they had to create categories and organize and answer a question with them. But that you can take any one of the primary sources and adapt it to any learner. So one, for visually impaired, we do have the closed caption, which is good for your ESL or your English language learners as well. But with many of the text and photographs, the level of analysis you do with them really depends on where your students are. So any one of the items, you could take a political cartoon, the one from Reconstruction that Larry was showing about death at the polls, and assign the students to look for other political cartoons like that, to look for, editorials in different newspapers. We have several court cases that are spread throughout. If you have really high-level kids, you're going to want them to read more than just 3 little excerpts that we have on those 3 matching items. For like U.S. versus Nixon, we have both Nixon's resignation letter and the court case about the tapes. So there's lots of capacity for you to modify and adapt it and extend it to whatever level kids you're using. And we are working on creating correlations to every state's personal standards. Larry and Joe, I don't know if they want to use volunteered. I kind of asked them if they would help us correlate it to the Pennsylvania standards. And we do have some small stipends that we can available for teachers in the various states to help us correlate to those standards. So if that's something you're interested in, make sure you just reach out to us. because we would like to have on the Engaging Congress webpage a little box that says correlation to state standards and have a pull down menu for every state. The last thing that I'm going to say before we walk away is that you are able to sort the primary sources on the teacher website by content. So if you're teaching US history, for example, you want them sorted by era. The thematic zones don't really work well for you if you're doing US history. So you can sort them by era, and you can have the ones from the Revolutionary War, Reconstruction, the Progressive Era. So you can sort them that way. If you are a topic teacher, maybe you're doing current events in government, you can look at the sorted by topic. So that is just our quick introduction that we wanted to share the information with you. I am happy to stay on for a little bit and look at the chats and answer people's chats, but I know you guys are all super busy. But if any of you are interested in helping us with correlating with state standards, please reach out and email any of us who got in touch with you, how you registered. Tweet us at Engaging Congress is our Twitter handles. Another way, we have a Facebook page. And we are going to do an unconference next week at this same time. So we will be talking more about Engaging Congress. So thanks all of you guys for coming today and bearing with us. We will figure out how to make the embedded video work better before our next presentation, but I'm glad I at least remembered to turn on the closed caption. So thank you all, and I hope you have a great day, and I'm just going to check the chat. So if you have a question for me and want to hang around and put it in the chat, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank
and please feel free to share this with your school corporation, since this is all available at no cost to you or your corporations at any time, because it was funded by your dollars in Indiana University. So it's not just free for this school year.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.